authentic doesn't mean going to the interview in your sweatpants.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Career Brand Story, a podcast that provides expert career coaching every week. I'm Jeremy Tudor, and on today's show, we are talking about how to build a personal brand. My company is made up of a team of coaches and marketers and storytellers, and we are changing the way that we lead and how career brand stories are shared. We're passionate about helping people share their career brand story effectively. In today's job market, where there is so much noise to cut through, the internet has allowed jobs to be posted faster, and seen globally, we actually only have an increase in the volume of candidates that apply to jobs. So much so that when you apply, you may be one of 300 others competing for a job. LinkedIn currently has over 660 million registered users, with 303 million of them being active on a monthly basis. And that, my friend, is a lot of noise to cut through. And while you might be hyper-focused on your resume, it is not going to be enough to help you land the job that you love. In fact, I will go as far as saying that you don't even need a resume if you know how to communicate your personal brand. So rip up your cover letter, rip up that resume, because the first place you need to start is knowing how to build your personal brand. I want to welcome back our guest, Jeb Graff, commercial photographer and creative consultant, and Abby Hook is joining us once again, our social media marketer here at Jeremy Tudor LLC. How are you all doing today?
Doing wonderfully. It's like kind of a part 2 of the Go Beyond is what it feels like.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into today's conversation around personal brand with both of you. And I'm actually going to just start it right off with that question. What brands do you connect with and why?
That is a great question. And it took me, when I saw the script, it took me some thought because I don't really think about brand. It's not top of mind material. So what I came up with were kind of a few different categories. I thought about Fujifilm, which is the brand of camera that I use. And back when I shot film, it was the main film stock that I shot with. I'll get to the why in a minute. I thought about one of my favorite bands is Wolfpack, and I love their brand. And then I thought about somebody that's near to your heart, Taylor Swift, as a brand as well. Yeah, so the why for me is with Fujifilm, they are a very customer-focused company. Like, they're not quite as buttoned up, I think, as like a Nikon or a Canon is. And one thing I really love is they listen to customer feedback and they make those changes to their cameras, and then they release free firmware updates, and which, like, in some cases gives you, it feels like you're getting a whole new camera for free, but it's the one you already own. You just download the firmware and load it up. So I just really love brands who are actually listening to their customer base and supporting them with the things that they need. I chose Wolfpack because not only are they great musicians, very talented, but they just they really fit that that phrase of marching to the beat of their own drum or a different drummer or whatever the phrase is that I just screwed up. But they are not polished and packaged. They did a sold out show at Madison Square Garden without a manager, without a label. And, talk about grassroots. They're just very, very in tune with their listeners and their fan base. And I'm just blown away by how they use this simplicity aesthetic combined with funk music to go as big and as far as they've gone. So I think that's incredible. And then I go with Taylor Swift because I just think she's incredible. She don't take no crap from anybody. And this is one of those cases where I'm not even that crazy about the product. I like some of her songs, but I'm not a huge Taylor Swift music fan. I just think that what she's doing in the music industry, for musicians, for women. I think it's really cool. So she is by far one of my favorite people out there as far as personal brand goes. And that's what I got.
For me, a couple of things came to mind. I think I'm typically pretty drawn to branding that seems localized in some way. There's a lot of like Johnson City this, Johnson City that, which is where I live. And so I feel connected to that because it's part of my community and something I want to participate in and be a part of. I also appreciate when people or companies have some sort of orientation towards like something meaningful in the world, or just like a certain mindfulness. I guess an example of that is one of my favorite bands, the 1975. Their branding seems like pretty simple most of the time. And then they've got all these like wild and random music videos, but their lyrics are really, really thoughtful and often political statements about things that people really care about in the world and that really matter. I appreciate that. There's also a person that I follow on Instagram. I don't know her.
Oh.
She is like an interior designer person, I guess. She lives in Colorado Springs. Super cool. Not only are her like just colors, her aesthetic is just like incredibly beautiful and buttery and deep, I don't know, somehow. But in her bio on Instagram, I guess this is okay to say on a podcast, she calls herself the creative director of this MFing house. And there's something in me that just resonates with that and just respects that so deeply. But just the way that she approaches her home and what it means to her and her family and what it means to make that beautiful is something I'm really drawn to.
I like that. So can you share so we can partake, or is this like one of those I knew her first and you're not allowed to see it?
No, I absolutely am so happy to share. Her name is Ari Danielson. So Ariana Danielson. I think her tag is Ariana_Danielson.
Ariana_Danielson. Looking her up. Check her out, people.
All right. So I was kind of like looking back at my expenses, and I think one way that you notice what kind of brands you connect with is where you spend your money, right? So I'm a real creature of habit. So I was kind of going down the line of just restaurants that I ate at, and definitely this clear pattern. So here in Johnson City, and I know they have franchises elsewhere, but Maple Street Biscuit, which actually was recently acquired by Cracker Barrel, is a place that I really like to go to. Their biscuit with cheddar cheese and apple butter is hands down like the best thing I've ever put in my mouth as a breakfast item. And when we didn't have COVID and quarantine, I actually really liked going to work there because they're very community driven and focused. And so it was just a great kind of environment to be able to go to. And so the other piece to this is that it's always interesting to me, like bigger brands that acquire these smaller brands. We don't always realize that or connect that because my family, we like Cracker Barrel too, so that's kind of cool. And then another place, and my son, Luke, and he's actually here in the studio today with me. So one place that he and I, we've taken his sisters with us, and we've decided that we don't enjoy that when we do this, that we like it to be a father-son thing. But we love Pizza Hut. We love getting, we usually get wings, but we also get the pan pizza, pepperoni sausage. He's like shaking his head. Yes, 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 yes. And we haven't been able to have it because we actually like to go into the restaurant. And I don't know, most Pizza Hut restaurants that you go into are not like, Jeb, you know what I mean? They're just not grand.
They're pretty gross.
Yeah, they really are.
To be really candid about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't like improve that, but I don't know. We just love to go in and do that and eat at Pizza Hut. It's part of the Yum Brands, which also own Taco Bell and Burger King. And so I think for me, the pizza part, man, personally, I just like their pan pizza better. That's just part of it. But it also brings back these memories of nostalgia as a kid. So I did like the book it, read it plan. And I would, you read so many books and then you got your free personal pan pizza. It was a great program.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of remember doing that. So I think like the brand has a way of connecting me back with things that you identify, things that I care about, things that I experienced in my past that now I get to share with my son. And that's just kind of a cool tie-in. So,
yeah, I think that that's one area they could really maybe improve upon, like really nostalgia for people our age has hit big recently. Like you think about shows like Stranger Things and stuff, really going back to this 80s vibe and early 90s feel like, what if Pizza Hut embraced that a little bit more and did more book it and did throwback logos and, maybe squirted some cleaning products on their tables and booths once in a while. That would be nice. But
here's the issue. As a kid, do you remember Pizza Hut really being any better?
A little bit. Maybe not.
Maybe they are playing on that nostalgia.
Yeah, that's true. They may not have been cleaner, but they were fuller. They had more customers. Yeah. And so like you didn't notice the 7-week-old olive crammed in the back of the booth.
Right.
Which I'm not saying this to malign a brand you connect with, because I'm the same. We get Pizza Hut all the time, and it's just like we just look the other way. We're just like accepting.
Yeah, the pizza that you eat outweighs the dining room experience.
Right. And before anybody comments on YouTube or sends us nasty grams, like we know this is not gourmet. This is like salty candy is what it is. Yeah. That's how I think of fast food and what some may call trash food. It's just, right. I don't have a sweet tooth as much as others. I like my candy to be salty, and that's why I eat at Pizza Hut and Taco Bell.
That's right. Yeah. So Marty Neumeier says this, that a logo is not a brand is not an identity, a brand is not a product. A brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. So do you agree with that statement? Is that fair?
Let me think about this a little bit. What do you got, Abby?
I don't consider myself like the expert on brand, so I'm not going to say this is right or wrong, but I definitely think it's an interesting take on brand. I think in my life, I've probably tended to think of it as something like very rigid and concrete and identifiable. But the effect of branding is that gut feeling. And I think that's what we humans just recognize is that gut feeling before we are able to actually identify what the branding is that's causing that in us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think anytime I talk about brand at a professional capacity or even just chit-chatting with people, it always comes back to a feeling, which is really frustrating, because you want to be able to put a pin in it and say it's done, but brand is so much something that kind of floats in the ether, and it can be, I guess, pointed to with colors and language and phrasing and that kind of thing. But it really is hard to just put it in a box. And so I always like the idea that brand is simply reputation, which is super important. The conversation we've had before about the difference between a Target and a Walmart, who for basic things carries the same products, you still have a completely different experience when you visit them.
Which is kind of why, take a big brand like Amazon continues to win out, is that their customer service is superior to other places at the end of the day. So people get frustrated with Amazon, being as big and growing as large as it has. But the one thing that, if you look at what they focused from the very beginning, was always about their customer service.
That's an interesting take. I never think about customer service when I think about Amazon. When I think about Amazon, I think about cheap.
Or efficiency, or like it gets to me the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, has been kind of controversial lately because they're not getting stuff delivered as quickly as they used to. So people are saying, why am I a Prime member? Like I no longer get second day, but yeah, I guess that is a kind of customer service efficiency. Like, what they are, which is important for any brand, I think, is knowing what you're getting into. You don't go to Amazon.com expecting like a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing experience. You kind of go and spend your money and click the fastest shipping and get it over with. Wait for the box to get to your doorstep.
Yeah, I really like West Elm as a store, like what they have in it, because it's very mid-century modern. So that aesthetic appeals to me.
Mm-hmm.
But so I will look at their things, and therefore I get their ads like on Facebook and everything. And but their customer service is horrible. Like if you ever read through like their Facebook ads, it's a nightmare. And in my head, I'm like, oh, that's really sad. I will never buy from them.
Oh, that stinks.
Yeah. I mean, it's that horrible. They need to fix.
Which really points to reputation, right? Like we go looking for something, we go look at reviews, which reviews are a whole other topic. They're either awful or they're the best, and what can you really trust? But yeah, I mean, it only takes reading a handful of 1-star reviews to make you think that you might take that product out of your cart and do it yourself or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I even shop. If I do shop on Amazon, I do read reviews, of what someone thought about the product, the timing of the product, and even if they're like a third-party service through Amazon, or if I'm on a different type of site, I'm online. I'm definitely looking at all those reviews to see how someone felt or thought about the product and the service that went along with it, which does come back to reputation. I think that's really great. I know we've said this before. Seth Godin had said that brand is building something that matters with a story people care about. You buy into specific brands because you cared about it. It brings meaning. It gives you a sense of belonging, but that brand has built trust and credibility at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's when you're thinking about making that purchase, you're once again casting yourself as the hero of your own movie and deciding, what is that thing going to make you feel about yourself? And what are you envisioning yourself doing with that? Any ad you see that takes place in a coffee shop with a wood grain table, you're probably going to see a Mac laptop sitting on that table with the logo removed or whatever. But
right,
you buy a new Mac and you see yourself sipping a latte with some beautiful latte art at a local coffee shop with a wood grain table and metal chairs and like succulents or something, that whole vibe.
I totally buy into that.
Yeah. Be a bohemian with this $2,500 computer. Scroll
you can
Facebook
no longer
in
afford
style.
your latte.
Right. Yeah. Put that latte on a credit card.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we've talked a lot about the brands that we connect with, and I'm sure our listeners are like, okay, but what does that have to do with me? And why do I even need a personal brand?
Everything.
So what do you think is, and I have an answer for this one, but I want to know what you all think. What do you think is the most difficult part of personal branding for most people?
One of the difficult things I think probably at least for young people. I don't know. I've never been old yet, so maybe for older people as well.
Hold on just a second. What is old for you, Abby?
Old is continually growing for me. Old is like older than my parents, and my parents are
continue
late
on.
50s, so everyone here is safe.
Continue on.
But I think something that probably is difficult is that feeling that you still have like a developing sense of self, and feeling like you need to have a really concrete sense of yourself in order to start like having a personal brand or marketing your personal brand. For other people, maybe it's just finding the confidence in your authentic self and not feeling like you have to adhere to other people's preferences in your own personal brand, because it is your own personal brand. But a lot of us are, we want to be liked. We want people to resonate with that. But it also, I feel like it is important that it is authentic and that you're confident in it, which is not always easy.
So I think that's a really great point that you bring up, just about like the developing piece of you, because I know for me, well, two things. I don't know that I really thought about my brand prior to starting a company. I probably did have a brand or vibe, right, that people connected with. But I don't know how much thought I really gave to what that was. And that looked different in my 30s, in my 20s, I should say, because I'm only 41 now. So I just got to the 40s, but it looked different in my 20s and early 30s. And then the second piece to that is 3 years ago, I really did recreate and reimagine what my brand is, where I really got focused on it and came to a place where I really do know who I am and what I'm about. And I think that comes across very clearly, very focused, in all of my branding today. And I resonate with the fact that that's something that developed as I grew in experience and started to figure out really who I am. And, I don't know that I always had a clear picture of that in my 20s, nor should I, maybe. I don't know. I think that's with some of the, when we look at some of the young artists, like we'll talk even about like a Taylor Swift, I think that they quickly figured that out faster than maybe other people. And you can see that and how that evolutionized in their own life.
Yeah. I think if you're not developing, you're dying. Like, well, let's look at the Pizza Hut thing. Like they changed their logo whenever it was, maybe early 2000s or something. And they added that Wing Street thing and tried to become a little bit more like a bar and grill or whatever for pizza. I don't know. And all it did was create confusion. Like, I think they had a good thing going with their brand collateral, their logos and their look and their feel. But going back to the cleanliness thing, they had a reputation issue. And like, instead of focusing on kind of upping their customer service and improving their reputation, they focused on like changing their pizza toppings and logos and tried to be neighborhood, hip, urban something. To me, that's my take. That's my hot take. But yeah, they're really out of touch with themselves. So yeah, when Abby said that, I wanted to clap my hands really loudly and say, yeah, it does not have to look, your personal brand does not have to look like a brand that you admire or a brand that you like or the brand that's working for somebody in the same field. It needs to look like you and you at your best. I always want to add that part because sometimes I think we confuse authenticity with harsh reality.
Yes.
And that's not to say that, we all don't have our mistakes and all, but I don't like I may have bad hair, but I still don't show up to the podcast every time like I just rolled out of bed. I at least try, and then it takes over and does stupid stuff. But authentic doesn't mean going to the interview in your sweatpants.
Right. No one wants to see me shoving apple pie in my face.
Well, maybe for like a special podcast, we could raise some money or something. But yeah,
Has that
you're right.
happened?
No, not yet. I'm trying to throw an idea out here. Yeah. Well, so when I'm talking with clients and stuff, one of the number one things that I hear from people in their words is that, well, I really just either I don't know how to talk about myself or I don't like talking about myself. And so my response every single time when clients say that is like, yes, but you need to learn how to advocate for yourself. And you have to have this like conscious and intentional effort to create your personal brand. It's about advocating for yourself in your career to tell your story that elevates your credibility. It's what differentiates yourself from others. It's how you have an impact around those that you're around. And so, and I don't think that like your personal brand is just for like superstars like Taylor Swift, who, by the way, just recorded a whole new album while in quarantine. I mean, I did things too. Like I ate baked cookies and ate pie and gained 10 pounds. So I feel like I accomplished something too, but who like sits down and goes, you know what, over the next 60 days here, while I'm just by myself, we're just going to record a whole new album and she's going to make millions. Right.
Well, Taylor Swift does, obviously.
But I bring her up because first of all, I am a fan of hers, and same with you, Jeb. I can't say I couldn't name you a single song that she's written because I don't always connect artists and songs together. But I do like her because I've watched her from a brand standpoint. I think she's very authentic. I think she has taken some pretty tough stands in the music industry and has really recreated it in a good way for future artists. And so Taylor Swift, if you're ever listening to this podcast episode, I would love to have you on the show. So please reach out to us. But this is a thing. She understands brand. And she created her fan base by herself, I think is the other part that is really remarkable about her. And so in this Instagram post about her new album, she says this. She said, before this year, I probably would have overthought when to release this music at the perfect time. But the times we're living in keep reminding me that nothing is guaranteed. My gut is telling me that if you make something you love, you should just put it out into the world. That's a side of uncertainty I can get on board with. And so there's two things that I really loved about what she said. One, this is all about going beyond. Right?
Yeah.
This is, if you love it, get it out there. Stop stalling, stop coming up with excuses, stop waiting. There's never going to be a perfect time for you to come up with the perfect brand for yourself. You really cannot afford not to think about it and not to create your career brand story. And so now is the time to go beyond and actually do it. And then the second thing is that I think that your personal brand starts with talking about what you love, right? That thing that makes you get out of bed on Monday, that you're really excited about, that really makes you thrive. And I think those are two things for all of us, again, to realize that I don't have to be a superstar. I don't have to be I cannot say his first name now. It's blanking.
Kanye West?
I can't say it. It will not come out. Say it again.
Kanye
I can't
West.
do it. It's like it will not come out of my mouth right. Yes, or Taylor Swift, or anybody else out there. You don't have to have that. You can create your personal brand and tell your story just as you are.
This is going back a little bit to the initial question of one of the hardest things about personal brand. And we touched on it on our last podcast. And that is to me, I think one of the hardest things is imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud. And that idea of like, well, if I talk about myself or if I think about myself in this way, then I must be a narcissist, which that word's thrown around too easily anyway. But I was actually talking to my therapist about this because I really don't like attention, but I like performing, which is a weird paradox, right? And she kind of pointed out that like not wanting all that attention is in a similar, it's basically getting me the same thing as wanting all the attention because I'm still just focused on myself and what I want. So if people want to celebrate you and your brand, it's good to let them do that and to honor what other people like about you, or think about your authenticity. And you can elevate it and put it on show a little bit. There's nothing wrong with gaining from the work that you put into yourself.
I love that language that Jeremy used about advocating for yourself. It's not like you are just being entirely selfish or narcissistic, but that word advocate kind of helped to shift my mindset a little bit to a healthier place, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've been called egotistical. Maybe there's times I've deserved that, but I do think that it's, I struggle. Jeb knows this as my brand consultant. I did a lot of actual deep thinking before I ever called my company Jeremy Tudor LLC. And I went and talked to my therapist about that quite a bit, because, how people perceive you, what they think about that. And yet there was very good reasons from a marketing standpoint, from a brand standpoint, why that was the right thing to do. And I think that's shown today in how our business is growing and what we're doing. But I think a lot of people struggle with that advocating for themselves. But if you never do it, you're never going to open those other opportunities that should be open to you, places that you are able to share uniquely your voice, and your talents and your gifts, that the world needs to see. And again, maybe it's not to the hundreds of millions, maybe it's just to the 50 or 75 people or to 100, and I think that's the other piece too, is that we get into comparison, right? I can do that with other career coaches. So even on LinkedIn, I quickly connected with all these other career coaches, and I recently went through and I kind of hid them all because I found myself starting to compare, like, what are they doing and what are they saying, versus me just knowing and saying my perspective on career coaching. And my perspective is uniquely different from somebody else's. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, unless we're talking about cover letters. But, but all of our voices are needed to be able to help people where they're at.
Yeah.
For most professionals, LinkedIn is where you will have a professional online presence. While LinkedIn is a powerful social media platform for networking and job searching, let's be clear, it is all about your career personal branding. The mistake most people make is that they signed up for LinkedIn a decade ago, copied and pasted their resume, and went on their way. Here's the problem. 100% of recruiters and hiring managers are going to look at your LinkedIn profile. The question is, what will stand out about you among all the other millions of users on LinkedIn? Don't miss an opportunity to differentiate yourself from the other applicants they are considering. LinkedIn offers an opportunity for you to deliver personalized marketing. And here's some quick tips on how to deliver a personal brand on your LinkedIn profile. Your About Me section should be formatted as a first-person narrative, format that communicates who you are and what you are about. Be sure to emphasize your strengths, keep it simple, and be yourself. Craft a headline that creates curiosity. Do not simply put your current position and employer. Think creatively here. What are the top 3 qualities you bring to the table as an employee? What do you want recruiters and hiring managers to know about you right off the bat? Remember to curate a LinkedIn profile that communicates who you are just as much as it communicates what you do.
Brand is not just a logo, a color, or a catchphrase. It's custom. It's your language, your culture, your vibe, and so much more. So why leave your brand imagery up to whatever you can find on a stock photography website? I'm Jeb Graff, and I'd like you to consider getting in touch with me for your custom photography for your custom brand needs. I've worked with people across the United States to make photography that tells their story better and more effectively than any search on a stock site could. And I'd like to work with you too. So go to jebgraff.com/contact to leave stock behind and say hello to imagery that's as custom as your brand. That's jebgraff.com/contact. Talk to you soon.
Okay, so let's just dive in here now to get really practical. How do you start to craft your personal brand? And I think first, that's most important is you've got to keep your message focused. I think within the context of your career, that's about communicating where you are today and where you're going tomorrow. And it makes it much easier than for you both for you to be able to create the content around your personal brand, as well as how you communicate that out to people. And it really can then start to open conversations and opportunities for you in your career. So one of the things that our team has been working on, we mentioned in the last episode, and if you are a subscriber to our emails newsletter, you are getting that today in your email, is that we have created a brand board, just a visual board for our clients to be able to use. If you'd like to get that, go sign up for our email subscription and you'll get that as well. But I thought, Abby, you could walk us through the purpose of the brand board, what's on it, and how you think it can help focus your personal brand.
Yeah, the brand board is something I'm really excited about. I kind of think of it as a space to learn and explore. It asks questions like, what motivates you? What adjectives would your inner circle or even your inner self use to describe who you are? What are your values? What are your strengths? How do you envision your best self? And as we've been crafting it, I've been trying to keep it from being too structured and like keep a little bit of space for imagination and creativity so that people can use it however they need it to be. But it's really just a place to explore and visualize and experiment with what you think that your personal brand could be, what you think you want it to be, and see kind of what feels right to you, what seems like you. There's no right or wrong answer necessarily on a brand board, but hopefully it is a step towards kind of a commitment in your brand and to say, this is right, this is where I am right now, and this is where I'm heading.
Yeah, and we're going to spend in future episodes, we've got some other tools. Once you've kind of filled out this brand board, how do you take this and how do you craft it into a story? And where do you really use that? Where do you leverage that story on social media platforms like LinkedIn? How do you use it in your resume? How do you use it, in your interviewing and networking? And so really, I think this is a better place for people to actually start than their resume. But so many people, right, when you think about a job and applying for a job, the first thing is you actually think about your resume. And here we're kind of reverse engineering that. Let's talk about you first. Let's talk about where you are, where you're going, and let's figure out what your personal brand is, and then bring that into those marketing tools like your resume, like LinkedIn, like your story pitch, so that you can really communicate it effectively. I think some other things that are really important to keep in mind when you start creating your personal brand is be real. Be who you are. Don't try to be someone else. Authenticity matters, and people will see right through it when you're not being real. The second thing that's really important to keep in mind is that you got to tell your story. I know that some will say, well, there's nothing really special about my story. I haven't really accomplished a lot of things. That's just plain wrong for anyone out here. Unless you have literally just not worked your entire life, it's just, we all have gifts. We all have talents. And this is, again, really important in that advocating for yourself to tell your story. Everyone has a story to tell, and it should be told. Your story is uniquely different from my story. Your perspectives are different from mine. And personally, that's what makes this world so beautiful, is when we can sit down and really listen to one another's stories and perspectives, and let that shape us.
Yeah. And I'd also add that it's not up to me to decide what's interesting about me. It doesn't matter whether I think I've got a cool story.
Yeah. We always use this illustration and joke about it, but I mean, if Jeb really likes cats and has 20 cats in his house, there's people out there who want to hear that story, and then there are people who probably don't.
Yeah. And some of the people who want to hear that story just want to hear it so they know where to send animal control.
That's right.
I'm down to 2 cats.
But it's really true. Is like, that is exactly right. Is that, it's not for anyone else to sit there and judge. It is just so important for us to go beyond and put out our story and let the people who need to hear it. And then I think this last thing is really important to keep in mind. And I think that this is also sometimes can be an obstacle and challenge. I just talked to some new clients this week about it as they were coming on board with us. And that's really to embrace new ways to tell your story. Because some will say to me, well, I don't know how to use LinkedIn, or I haven't really used it. Okay, great. Learn it. Maybe how much you put out there about yourself in the public view is intimidating. But again, you be you, and you also get to decide, this is how much I want to tell of my story and what part, I want to tell. So, but you're going to have to embrace the technology that is out there. And I don't think that means that you have to all of a sudden join every single social media channel that is out there. You can choose which avenues and which ways that you want to communicate your story. I'm not on Twitter. I've never been on. I have an account with Twitter. It's just not something that I use. I engage with. I know lots of people that do, but it's just not a place that I go to. I've been learning TikTok. That is a fascinating and scary rabbit hole to go down. And I know Abby's on it. Jeb, I think you're on it too. Are you at least signed up to explore?
I'm officially in lurker mode. I've not produced any content for it at this point.
I've produced like 4 videos. And I'm learning it. I don't understand how it works. So it takes me time to figure out like how to make it work and how to do it. So my point being is that whatever medium you choose, that fact, even if you decided not to do social media and you decided you wanted to do a blog or you wanted to write a book, you still have to learn how to use that medium and figure out how to tell your story best. And so the excuse of saying, well, I just don't know how to do it, that just doesn't work. Even in resumes today, you've got to learn how to tell your story that markets you best. You can't keep a resume that you did 10 years ago and think that works for today, because it doesn't. So whatever medium you use, learn new ways to be able to tell your story and to be able to engage it. Video is a very popular way to do it, and most people don't like to see them on videos, right?
Scary.
Yeah, I mean, even doing these podcasts, and we put them on YouTube, and I don't think every single time I look at myself or I watch myself on this, I'm like, oh, I don't know why anyone would watch this, is how it comes across. But, I'm also willing to learn how to get better at presenting myself on video. Actually, my mom, who is a big fan and will listen to this, so hi, Mom, she critiqued me. She was like, well, when you're doing your podcast, it'd be really great if you looked into the camera. So here, Mom, I'm looking into the camera. I'm looking at you.
We're going to talk about that a little bit at our team meeting that's coming up. I may disagree with her on that a little bit.
Yeah, and I do too, 100%, right? I can get better at it. I can learn how to do that. And that's my point, is that we all can learn how to do these things better and not be so scared of them. And so what happens on video and like this, people get to see the real me. They get to know the real me. Not always going to be perfect. But as I say all the time, progress, not perfection.
Didn't even say that phrase perfectly. So it's a perfect example.
I didn't even know that I didn't say it perfectly.
We got a question for you, Jeremy.
What's the question?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Man, I was trying to avoid this question, like to be the host who never answers the question. And so we've run out of people since we asked Abby this, and we've already asked you, Jeb, this. For me, and it's the main driver of what I do now, what I want to be when I grow up is I want to be someone who leaves a legacy and an impact that changes people's lives by building a remarkable company. And so that's what I'm really trying to do with Jeremy Tudor LLC, our career brand, story brand, and future things. I envision myself becoming somewhat of a serial entrepreneur who will launch multiple brands, because I love to start stuff, dream stuff, and build stuff. And so that's kind of the path I'm on now. And I'm enjoying it, and it feels right, and it feels like me, which is interesting to be in this spot, because when I look back at all of my career, both from being in the ministry to talent acquisition and recruiting, there are a lot of days that I flew from Raleigh, North Carolina to California. And I have this in notebooks. I would map out my career. I had like a ministry career, and I had this other career. And I was always trying to like figure out and piece them together when I was flying across the country. Like, why am I doing this? What does this all mean? And to be sitting where I am today, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, all of those things that I was doing have come to this moment right now.
Well, that's a lot better answer than mine.
Same.
Well, it's because I'm the expert career coach.
Oh,
right.
Experience wins again.
That's right. Well, if you liked what you heard today, you can hear more every week from us by opting into our email newsletter. Simply go to jeremytudor.com to sign up today. We promise we're not going to spam your inbox. We simply send one email each week with our expert career coaching advice. By the way, if you are wondering where you can follow, like, comment, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Just search Jeremy Tudor. On Instagram, it's at Jeremy T. Tudor. Also, while many of you listen to this podcast, because that's what a podcast is for, you can also watch each episode on the YouTube. So just go smash the subscribe button. I don't know if I still said that right.
You did it right this time.
Yes. All right. Smash the subscribe button. You can search Jeremy Tudor or Career Brand Story to find us on the YouTube. And if you want to find the wonderful and amazing Jeb Graff, you can find him on Instagram at Jeb Graff. And you can also find our wonderful social media marketer, Abby, on Instagram at Abby Hook. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and keep thriving.
If you're interested in advertising your business on our podcast, we advertise for local and national companies. Contact McKay at careerbrandstory.com for more information. That's MCCAY at careerbrandstory.com.